Today, the Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning presented a memorandum to Council requesting for approval of the National Development Plan for 2021 to 2025, which is a plan that is succeeding the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, the ERGP, which has expired in December 2021. This National Development Plan, we call it the NDP for short, is structured around 6 clusters, and these clusters include economic growth and development, infrastructure, public administration, human capital development, social development, and regional development. Let me also say that the plan is underpinned by a macroeconomic framework which projects an average real GDP growth of 5% per annum over the growth, 5% over the plan period. And also the plan has been costed to have an investment size of 348.7 trillion over the 5-year period. This investment size is to be contributed by the public sector at 49.7 trillion, representing 14.3%, and the private sector at 298.3 trillion, representing 85.7%. Also, the public sector expenditure component of 49.7 trillion will be contributed by both the federal government as well as the states. The federal government expenditure component is 29.6 trillion, representing 8.5% of the total expenditure size, and while the subnational government, the state governments, will be contributing 20.1 trillion, representing 5.8%. The funding strategies for the plan have also been identified, and this include the broadening the tax base, enhancing capacity of the private sector through creating investment opportunities and deliberate policy engagements and incentives, also exploring domestic and concessionary financing sources, and setting up financial investment vehicles such as growth funds and public-private partnership, as well as the Nigeria Investment and Growth Fund. The implementation of the plan requires establishment of a strong implementation mechanism and framework that promotes performance and accountability, which is necessary for the implementation of the plan. There will also be a development plan implementation unit that will report to the National Steering Committee, which will be headed by His Excellency the Vice President, with the Ministers of Finance, Budget and National Planning as Vice Chair. The establishment of the project, Plan Development Implementation Unit will be in the planning arm of the ministry, and the coordination of the implementation of the plan will be carried through to ensure that ministries, departments and agencies, state governments, private sector operators, civil society organizations, and among others, are all working in a coordinated fashion. The plan also has a specific concentration against to deliver during the 5-year period, and immediately we get this plan launched, we will be continuing the work on the longer-term plan, which is the Nigeria Agenda 2050. And this is to make sure we don't have a vacuum going forward, that we have medium-term plans for 5 years, and there is a longer-term plan, which is the Nigeria Agenda 2050. The long-term plan, the Nigeria Agenda 2020 work, will continue immediately we launch this medium-term plan. Going forward, the annual national budget will be derived from the plan, the details of which has already been costed, and all ministries, departments, and agencies will be required to draw their programs and projects from the detailed plan that they themselves have submitted during this process. The National Development Plan 2021 to 2022 has been approved today by the Federal Executive Council for implementation as a successor plan to the elapsed Economic Recovery and Growth Plan 2017 to 2020. I want to invite the HMS to add on some of the work we did in terms of stakeholder engagement.
Thank you very much, HM.
For that question, I wish we have time for me to present to you the details of the plan. But we do have a launch of the plan that is going to come up, and then the plan will be a published document. But just to say, one of the things that we did differently, in addition to making sure that it's quite inclusive, is to have an implementation document underpinning the plan. So we have clearly an implementation structure with a steering committee. We have a responsible department that is created, sitting in the planning arm of the ministry to ensure the monitoring of the plan across the federal, state, and local government, but also even to the private sector. We costed the plan to make sure it's clear from the beginning how much is required in terms of funding. We've already identified some of the funding sources, and we'll continue to identify more funding sources. We've also identified some of the measures that government needs to take in terms of reforms to encourage that investment that needs to be undertaken by the private sector. If you remember earlier when I said the total funding requirement for the 5-year period is 348 trillion, of which 85.7% will be contributed by the private sector. So it means the whole of government, federal, state, and local government, needs to concentrate on supporting the private sector with reforms, with initiatives, with policy to enable the private sector to thrive, because it is the private sector that will ensure that we meet these our growth aspirations that is provided for in the plan.
Thank you.
Okay. Just go outside.
Thanks for checking out SYMFONI on YouTube. Please be sure to subscribe and like our videos for updates.